I like that a sudden hush has come over the crowd. It's also interesting that at an education event, so many people have chosen to sit in the back of the class. Well, we're waiting for one panelist, but we're gonna begin the program, and we'll be off to the races. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm George Donnelly. I'm a partner at the State House News Service and Master List, and welcome to Equity in Education, Building Student Pathways to Economic Opportunity. State House News Service and its sister publication, Master List. If you don't know us, we're a daily political and policy news service, one that many people depend on for both in-depth and real-time political intelligence. We also partner with organizations to hold several events every year on major policy issues and trends. This morning's event is the inspiration of the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education, who, in partnership with Latinos for Education and Ed Trust Massachusetts, commissioned a groundbreaking report on what's really needed to close the equity gap, and with that, the opportunity gap. A lot of hard work went into this morning's event, and thanks to the team at MBAE for convening such an important conversation. Now I'd like to welcome Emerson Foster, a board member at MBAE and the head of human resources at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, to begin the program. Welcome, Emerson.
Good morning, everyone. I had an opportunity earlier to, do a brief session with the videographer. And, he asked, why is education policy important to industry? I immediately thought of just about talent and the need to continue to foster great talent in the Commonwealth, and the focus that we all need to bring to that policy work to ensure that we're supporting our young people through their education and into their early career activities. I want to echo some thanks: Latinos for Education, the Education Trust of Mass, and certainly MBAE and the Student Success Coalition for convening us and producing this incredible report. It's this type of focus that we need in the Commonwealth to really drive success amongst our young people. This report would not have been possible without the great input and insight from these 12 leaders of color who provided really critical information for us to really sink our teeth in today to really address some of the issues that we're having, certainly within Black and brown student populations. So thank you all for your input. I see some of the leaders here with us today, and really appreciate you taking the time to provide input and feedback and spending time with us today to dig a little bit deep into some of these really vexing, I think, policy questions and concerns. The report highlighted two things for me, or two things that I really think about, I think maybe on a daily basis. One, the concern around our state's place in supporting students through their high school career and beyond, whatever their future endeavors are, whether it be work or whether it be higher education. And we in Massachusetts for a long time has been considered a leader in that space, and now we're seeing slippage. Right, we're not considered in that leadership position in supporting our students through their ongoing endeavors, and we really need to put a better focus on that in the Commonwealth to really drive success moving forward. And certainly those infrastructure or constructs that we put in place in our high schools around pathways to success are not supporting our black and brown students in a way that it's supporting their peers in other communities. So we really need to put a focus on that. I think I've been doing this work, not really conscious in many ways of the work, but just doing the work for a number of years. And some of you may know that I helped to start an organization called Bottom Line back in 1997. And when you think of the work of Bottom Line and the impact that Bottom Line has had, it's really central to the themes that we're going to be discussing this morning. I'm sorry. And certainly, as you think about my work as a human resources leader, as I mentioned, talent and securing and curating our talent. This is what I do on a day-to-day basis, and ensuring that there's diversity and representation, appropriate representation within those cohorts is something that I work on daily. So very important work, and again, I think this report will really help put some focus on that. When I consider that the experience of going through my elementary education, I was thinking the other day, I ran into my fifth grade teacher about two or three months ago, a gentleman named Mr. Ridley, who was my fifth grade teacher at Connery School in the great city of Lynn. Shout out to Lynn. And Mr. Ridley is African-American gentleman. And every day I went to school, it was almost like I was seeing my pops in the classroom, right? The focus that he brought to me, what I saw in him as a leader, it certainly helped me aspire and allowed me to think maybe broadly about what I could be and positions of authority that I can probably acquire in the future. So, part of this report, an anecdotal report was really focusing on representation in the classroom and ensuring that we have proper diversity within our education educators. And so I know we'll dig into that a little bit this afternoon as well, this morning as well. Why do I keep saying this afternoon? Sorry, I travel into Boston every week for work, and literally I don't know whether I'm coming or going. So, shout out to Mr. Ridley. Further on, I had another teacher, Pat Barton, in the 8th grade, and I remember this, vividly, and just the disciplinarian that this, black woman brought to that classroom, the focus that she brought to us as students, and I always felt that she took an interest and a care in me that was different than other teachers did. Maybe she did or maybe she didn't, but in my mind she did, and so that was very, very important to me. So these are some of the things that we're going to discuss this morning. And the report highlights the critical needs that we have in the Commonwealth here. So again, thank these leaders for their feedback and input. And I know we'll have a spirited discussion this morning. So at this point, I want to welcome Liz Anderson from MBAE. And let me just say, I just want to thank MBAE. I've been a board member. Sorry, Liz. I've been a board member for a number of years. Sorry, Liz. Sorry, I appreciate it. But it just sparked me. I got to thank MBAE. Listen, I've been a board member for a number of years at MBAE. One of the things I told Ed's predecessor is, I don't know that I want to sit on a board because I'm not a policy guy. I want to do the work. And not that policies not work, but I'm saying on the ground, and I said I'm not a policy guy, so maybe I'm not the right person. But it's been a great relationship, and I appreciate you all keeping me on, even though I'm not as present as I'd like to be. So thank you. All right, Liz, thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emerson. And hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Anderson, and I'm the project manager of MBAE's work to advance college and career pathways for every student in Massachusetts. Today, I'm going to give a brief presentation about the report, which will hopefully help to give you some context to the discussion that you'll hear from our panelists and speakers later on today. So starting first with the why. Why did MBAE, Latinos for Education, and EdTrust partner together to write this report? It really all starts with our Student Pathways to Success Coalition. Last November, MBAE and 15 other education policy, business, parent, educator, and social justice organizations formed the coalition in efforts to address the persistent racial gaps that we see in degree attainment and wealth in Massachusetts. And so together as a coalition, we work to move state leadership to strengthen and scale college and career pathways in Massachusetts high schools so that every student graduates with the skills and tools and knowledge that they need to earn a good paying job after graduation. And as our coalition continued in our Pathways effort, we felt that it was important to dedicate our first major report to shining a light on the inequity of opportunity that Black, Brown, and other underserved student groups face in high school. And specifically, we wanted to identify what unique challenges and barriers that these students are facing in high school and how those things impact their post-secondary choices and overall readiness in college and career. And so to answer that question, over the course of several weeks, we spoke to 12 leaders of color representing Massachusetts nonprofits, higher education institutions, youth empowerment organizations, our K-12 system. And it was a really, really amazing experience getting to sit in on each of the conversations with these leaders. The things that they shared with us changed my own personal thinking on how I think about this issue, and I know that many others on my team feel the same. So thank you to all of the interviewees who are in the crowd with us today. So 4 major themes came out of our conversations with the leaders. The first being the need to expand access to opportunity. The second being addressing basic student need. The third, we focused on the role that confidence plays in student achievement and readiness. And then lastly, the importance of creating a culture of belonging and inclusion in the workplace. And so digging into that first theme, I have to lean over to get to this mic. Getting into the first theme, even though Massachusetts is known around the world as a leader in the life sciences, healthcare, higher education, a lot of the leaders told us that it seems that students in communities of color are largely unaware of the career opportunities in each of these key sectors of our local economy. And beyond not knowing what's possible for them, they really struggle to understand how to get to those career places. And beyond just a traditional, 4-year college track, what are the, credential programs that they can get involved in or other avenues to get to those careers? And so the importance of career exposure at an early age was something that was harped on. So addressing basic student need. Something that came out of the conversations was the fact that what students are experiencing outside of the classroom significantly impacts how they perform and engage inside of the classroom. We heard a lot of stories from some of the leaders about how students struggled with poverty, lack of housing, inadequate health care, and other social inequities. And those things had a major impact on their ability to be present and fully engaged in school. One of the leaders we spoke to was Victor Caraballo Anderson. He's the head of school of the Lawrence Public School System. And he told us a story about how many of his students work 40-plus hour weeks. They work overnight shifts just to help sustain their families. And as a result of that, sometimes they are chronically absent from school. Sometimes they are, falling asleep in class. And so hearing about those things made us really think that one way that schools need to do a better job of supporting their students' basic needs so that they can fully show up and achieve in the classroom. So closing the confidence gap. This was one of the most interesting themes that came out of the report for me personally. I was particularly interested in the ways that self-concept plays a role on marginalized students' academic and career paths. Something that we heard from our conversations is that deficit thinking from educators and career counselors can contribute to these students self-selecting out of pathways programs or advanced coursework, or even choosing not to pursue a higher education. And so the negative racial and socioeconomic stereotypes that students can encounter in both school contexts and larger society at large can really influence what a student thinks about their capabilities to succeed in a certain space. And so talking about these dynamics made educator diversity and cultural cultural competency training a major point of discussion in our interviews. And then the last theme that really came up from our conversations was the importance of belonging and inclusion in professional and academic spaces. The value of school business partnerships was a major point of discussion. A lot of the leaders spoke about how students stand to gain a lot of soft skills and technical skills from work-based learning experiences. And beyond the skill development aspect, just being in a professional space helps familiarize them and make them feel more comfortable in professional contexts, which can often be white-dominated and uninclusive and alienating feeling for them. And so one thing that really came out of our conversations is that for work-based learning experiences to have a full impact on students, it's really important that employers make a concerted effort to make their workplaces feel inclusionary. And employers really need to be willing to meet students where they're at and be willing to invest in their potential and talent so that they can develop those lifelong skills and go on to feeling like they can succeed in professional spaces. And so that's a brief overview of all the themes that came out of the report. Later on today, Ed Lambert, our executive director, is going to dig a little bit deeper into these themes and the policy implications behind them. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Clinton Gamna to share a little bit about his experiences in preparing for college and career. Clinton was one of the students we spoke to while writing this report. So Clinton, I welcome you up.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Clinton Gamna, and currently I am a student in Franklin Cummings Tech in the renewable energy pathway. Thank you. Shout out. So my journey throughout high school as an immigrant was met with a lot of financial hardship. So that made me question a lot of what my life would look like after high school and what success would look like. I was wondering what college I would need to go to. Would it need to be a four-year college for me to be successful? But questions like how would I afford that and how would I be able to pay for all of that? So looking into possible opportunities, I was fortunate enough to find a summer opportunity at Franklin Cummings Tech to explore their renewable energy career pathway. And going forward with that, I was able to participate in the Advanced Standing Associates program, which gave me the opportunity to attend their college for my first year for free, which really helped me explore what I was interested in and where I wanted to see myself. Being able to take advantage of that, I was able to enter as a student at the college, and I was really able to gain some confidence, some experience, some skills, and most of all, great opportunities and meeting phenomenal people that helped me achieve certain goals, such as what it is that I needed, what jobs I would look at, and other opportunities that were available to me. Currently, as a student, I believe that my journey throughout the college has really helped me gain that confidence in that leap that I needed for what my future would look like and what job I would possibly enter getting after my college. This is just my perspective, but we'll gladly play a video to hear from more students about what their perspective is like. One moment, please.
I've always known that I've wanted to be in the medical field since I was like little.
I remember I couldn't choose between lawyer or scientist.
When I was little, I still do. I wanted to be an animator. My mom grew me up on like black and white cartoons, and like Betty Boop was my favorite show growing up.
What I really want to do after high school, like I want to make music or be an engineer.
I understand that I'm going to be in school for a really long time, and I'm honestly ready for it.
It takes like years and years of school, like different degrees and stuff, like lots of experience to be able to do that.
I definitely do want to go to college, but it's also a subtle nervousness when it comes to it.
I feel like there is a lot of obstacles, but I really think I'm gonna make it. Oh, my grades, my GPA.
I could say like some obstacles could be like just like income wise.
I'm really relying on scholarships right now, and I'm just like paying for college for all of 4 years.
I would be the first in a while to go to college. A lot of my family didn't graduate high school. More resources. Teach children more about scholarships, because like I said, I don't even know how else I would get a scholarship.
I talked to one teacher about music, and he basically introduced me to Berkeley. Like I never knew nothing about Berkeley. I didn't even know that was a college.
I feel like we talk a lot about the youth, but don't do as much for them. It's like if they're the future, we need to take care of the future.
Trying your hardest, and also trying your hardest in your work, and also take time for yourself.
I would define student success on how you make it. I feel like if you work hard enough in your life for whatever you want to do, whatever you want, that should be successful enough for you.
Listen to youth. I feel like youth gets very overlooked, or like there's like bigger things to deal with instead of like a kid's education.
So any resources, so like that provides you with financial aid, I feel like helps a lot.
I feel like everyone's voice and opinion matters. You have to think about self-interest. What do you think the people want? What do they deserve? What should they deserve? And I feel like that should be just as equal for us as it is for them.
Good morning, everyone. While our next panel maybe comes up, I just wanted to quickly recognize Clinton and thank him so much for his great contributions. Thanks, Clinton. So my name is James Michowski. I'm the Director of Policy at MBAE, and I'm going to introduce a panel of 3 of the folks that we talked to in the interviews that Liz mentioned. As she mentioned, they were very rich, rewarding conversations that really informed the bulk of the paper. And we just wanted to kind of unpack a few of the issues that we get into in the report a little bit further in this panel. So coming to the stage, I'd like to welcome Dr. Almi Abeyta, the Superintendent of Chelsea Public Schools. Reverend Dr. Debora Jackson, the Stoddard Professor of Management and Dean of the Business School at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And Turahn Dorsey, the Chief Impact Officer of Eastern Bank Foundation. Great, so I would love if you all could start by just saying a brief word or two about your background, the current role that you play, and maybe something about the perspectives that you bring to this work, just so we can frame the conversation. Almi, I'd love for you to kick us off.
Sure. Hi, good morning. It's great to be here. I'm Almi Abeyta, and I am the proud superintendent of Chelsea Public Schools. I've been in education for over 25 years and try to avoid education because I come from a line of educators, but it found me. So I always say I'm doing God's work and that I'm doing what I am called to do, because boy, did I try to run away from it, because this is hard work. So I'm just grateful to be here this morning.
Thanks, Almi. Debora?
Good morning, everyone. I am Debora Jackson. I am the Dean of the Business School at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. I started my life as a software engineer software developer, spent several years writing code in a cubicle, I always describe it that way, before going back to grad school, earning a master's in management, a master's in manufacturing engineering, and that served me to consult and in software development for Fortune 500 companies for about 20 years before I acknowledged my call to ministry. I went back to school for seminary. I pastored a local church, the First Baptist Church in Needham, and ultimately our clergy organization in the American Baptist Churches USA, which took me to Yale Divinity School to start continuing education programs and led me back to my alma mater of my master's degrees to earn I had a doctorate in ministry, but then to lead the school, the business school. And what's interesting about that is I'm a business person, but I'm an engineer and want to ensure that business is a force for good in society, which picks up my ministry. So I really am living into my call, as you are, and grateful to be here.
We're grateful to have you, Debora. Turahn.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see some friends in the audience, old and new. Ron Dorsey, Chief Impact Officer at the Eastern Bank Foundation. First of all, Clinton, I want to thank you because maybe I'm coming first now because you're here as the proud chair of the board at Franklin Cummings Institute of Technology. I see a few of our leaders in the room as well, so I hope you are equally proud of Clinton. I'm also the former Chief of Education for the City of Boston in the Walsh administration as well. Which means maybe I know like a smidge of what you know about what I'm talking about up here today. I think I'm more of an education gadfly these days, but hopefully I'm still helpful. What's important about this conversation to me is, one, I'm somebody who was apprenticed into public policy research. I went to work for a firm in Detroit, Michigan at the age of 16. The day I walked in, the CEO said, "You're going to learn to do this. You will make a choice about whether you run this company one day." So by 19, I'm a project manager in the firm. All kinds of great things happening. Wound up at Abt Associates for about 13 years doing public policy research all over the country. But it really took that practical application of really having a career starting at 16, I think, to get to the places that I've gotten to. I'm encouraged that I think we've finally moved from a college for all perspective to a broader perspective on post-secondary success. I think that there is general agreement on the idea around pathways building. I think what I want to challenge us on this morning is, one, let's get concrete about the architecture that we're describing for pathways, because I think it lives in this abstract space where even though we have agreement on it, I'm not sure we know what we have agreement on. Secondly, let's also get beyond the rhetoric around equity. I think we've gotten really good at saying that we're about it. I'm not sure we're great at doing it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ron. Great way to kick us off. Almi, I've got a question for you first. Our interviews touched on a number of factors that determine whether students of color can find success in pathway programs. And something that came up probably most frequently was whether they have educators and school leaders who look like them and can connect with them. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of what impact it has when a student of color sees an educator or school leader who looks like them, and then also maybe give us some concrete steps of how district leaders can work to bring about greater opportunities such as that?
Sure, I'm smiling because I love that question. I was like, oh, I get to answer this question because this is the work. This is the work that we are doing in Chelsea Public Schools. And so my goal is to increase educator diversity, staff diversity. And so this is so important to me and important to our students because our students, when they see people of color, educators of color, they have to see mirrors of themselves. They have to be able to see themselves in the people that are educating them. And so it's so important that they see teachers, principals, administrators, superintendents, and they see and they say, wow, I can do that. And I'm a storyteller. I'm Latina, we tell stories. And so the best way to answer this question is with two stories, and I'll be brief. One is I was in a middle school when I first started in the superintendency, and I visit classrooms. And they don't know who I am when I initially go, when I first started. And I'm just asking the student, what are you doing? And then I'm talking to him. He's like, well, who are you? And I'm the superintendent. And he just looked at me, and he's like, you're the boss? And then, you're the boss lady? It's like, if you want to say it that way, I guess so. And he's like, Miss, because all our Latino students always say Miss. And he's like, that's really cool. And it just made me smile because he saw someone in leadership that looked like him. Last spring, I was at our National Honor Society induction ceremony, sitting on the stage. And, just sitting there participating. And then after, in the reception, I was grabbing something to drink, and a student comes over to me with a sense of urgency, and she's like, Miss, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure. She's like, no, like I need an appointment with you. I have a concern about my AP statistics class. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, yes, ma'am, okay, I will meet with you. So I said, it was a Thursday evening, and I was like, I will meet you Monday at 2:15 at the high school office. So I went over there that Monday, met with her. Name is Emily. And Emily's like, I have some concerns. She talked, and then I asked her, she's like, I wanted to meet with you because I felt like I could talk to you because you just looked like someone I could talk to because you look like family. And I was like, oh, God, I hope I'm not her grandma. And I was like, that was my worst fear. I was like, because I'm getting a little seasoned now. And later on, we had her speak on a student panel, and I call her my Emily. And I was like, Emily, what was I to you when you said I looked like family? She's like, you look like my TT or my auntie. And I was like, oh, thank God. So, not in the grandma phase yet, but the fact that there was that connection. So I have stayed in touch with Emily, and Emily is now the student that's featured at graduation on our strategic plan 2.0. And it's building those relationships with our students because our students need to see that Black and brown people of color are in leadership roles, are educators, and that is so important, and that's why we are working so hard. So one way to increase educator diversity, though, we have pipeline programs in Chelsea and in other districts too, and that is the best way. I believe in growing our own leaders. We grow our own in Chelsea, and so we have what we have funded, and we've got some funding through the Department of Ed, but it's parent to paraprofessional, paraprofessional to teacher. We found that our most diverse group are our paraprofessionals. So let's tap into our paraprofessionals, and most of them come from Chelsea. And so if we can, and they're bilingual, so if we can tap into our paraprofessionals and encourage them to become teachers, and then teachers to administrators, I have it in me to develop everybody, and I always tell my leaders at my cabinet table, I am developing you to be superintendents. So I may be a little hard on you. My expectations are high because I want you to succeed. I want you to grow and be a superintendent someday. I don't expect you to sit here at this table with me forever. I expect you to go and lead your own district. But with our back to the paraprofessionals, one issue that's been very difficult, many of our paraprofessionals are English language learners. And so they struggle with passing the MTEL. And so what we've done is we've provided MTEL prep courses in Chelsea Public Schools, and we support our paraprofessionals. I had one paraprofessional who took the MTEL test 8 times. And she stayed as a paraprofessional for 20 years. She is now in year 2 of teaching in a dual language program at one of our schools. She finally passed the test. And every time she sees me, she just gives me a hug and thanks me. And I'm like, well, I didn't do anything. I supported you, but you did this. And so that's I think the best way that we can improve and increase educators of color are tapping in to the people that we already have and growing them so that they can become educators.
Thanks, Almi. Debora, I've got a question for you based on the conversation that we had. A lot of the pathway programs that students will be participating in will lead them to spend time on the campuses of higher ed institutions to take coursework, and also to spend time on job sites for internships or other work-based learning opportunities. And as we think about students entering these spaces, can you talk about the importance of education leaders making intentional efforts to ensure that all students can feel a sense of belonging and inclusion, as well as the support they need to succeed?
Yes, thank you for that question, and thank you for such an excellent answer. I really appreciated hearing from you. Our students are looking for different pathways, and Mr. Dorsey said it in his opening remarks that we need diversity of pathways. College may not be for every student, but they need a pathway that is going to allow them to gain great experiences and a meaningful life, whatever it is that they want to do. And we have a responsibility as educators to create inclusive spaces where students can find themselves and figure out who they are and where they are going in life. And we do that by helping to create community. If you're not familiar with Worcester Polytechnic, historically, we're an engineering campus. Computer science is our top major. The business school, even though my majors are very technical, is really the smallest subset of our students. So you already find a space that is challenged to encourage Black and brown students, because we found ways to psych out our students in pursuing STEM careers in their early formative years. But as we are able to attract those students, it's really critical for us to create community spaces where they feel a sense of belonging and home, where they feel safe to admit that they don't know and they don't understand, and then we can undergird them with supports that they need to succeed. So in a place like WPI, we actually started bridge programs because of the fact that we have students who may have in their middle school or high school years been discouraged from taking math and science classes, such that they would never think that a place like WPI is even an option for them. So how can we fast track those students? Creating bridge programs, and then even again, a place like WPI where our undergraduates undergo 7-week terms as opposed to a traditional 14-week semester. You could take your calculus classes in a semester-based classes. Again, a way to create spaces where students can flourish and community and pacing that fits for them. Then as we are going to different sites, creating opportunities with our partners, with industry partners, we are talking to our industry partners about how do we create spaces for our students, creating ways for them to feel comfortable, feel a way and a sense of flourishing. We're doing that by helping students identify conveniences. Where do you go get your hair done? Where can you go find food that is part of your cultural upbringing? Where can you go to find people who look like you? We're thinking about that in our internships, in our placements, where students are going, and we want to create alternative pathways for college. Now, I'm a college administrator, so of course I'm going to promote college because one of the challenges that I see for our students is that, yes, there are multiple ways, but as long as we're in the skin that we're in, people find ways to undercut our value, and not having a degree will create a wealth gap. It continues to do so just by having that degree. A median income for someone graduating in Massachusetts in their first job is around $60,000, which is twice what they would earn with some college, and more than twice what they would earn with just a high school degree. So I want to see people who look like me still have that top earning potential and find different ways. Maybe WPI isn't your school, but there are other schools, there are other opportunities, there are other places and spaces, but we have to work to craft those spaces uniquely and specifically for those students. That's our job. That's what I try to do.
Thanks, Debora. And now, Ron, I've got a question for you. We hear all the time, as I'm sure you do, that some of our business partners are anxious about whether Massachusetts' talent pipeline is going to produce enough diverse, skilled workers to meet the job needs of the future. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of employers going, quote unquote, upstream into the talent development process, maybe playing a greater role in strengthening high school career pathway options? And also, how can business leaders, in partnership with districts and educators, conduct meaningful outreach to communities across the state where there may be less awareness of the fact that life sciences is a booming industry in the state?
So a lot of questions in one. So I'll try to I'll try to address it logically. So I think first, employers should not be anxious about the future of talent development and the diversity of talent development, but for the fact that they can do something about it. They don't have to wait at the end of the education pipeline to see who comes out. There is an opportunity, I think, in a world where they are getting a lot clearer about the skills mix, and the type of talent that they want to more directly train for it. And in fact, I would say it's the responsible thing to do, because I don't think that the rhetoric can be, this is what we need, and we will stand by until you, whoever you is, deliver it. So there's a shared responsibility here. I think increasingly they are better partners in training for the skills that they want, and can provide what I think of as an authentic learning experience. And so let me say 4 things about what I think authentic learning is. So one, it starts with young people's strengths, assets, their passions, the things that they want to learn about. So automatically it's differentiated and it's personalized. It's about the young person sitting in front of you and building the learning program for them. Secondly, it's about creating experiences that create capability. And so capability is the integration of knowledge and skill. It's being able to do powerful things with what you know. Not just knowledge, not just skill, but the combination of those things. Third, it's immersive and not simulated. The classroom is a powerful place, but we need students and young people in the places where the action is, in close relationship with the people who do a lot of what they aspire to do on an everyday basis. And lastly, and maybe to that last point, we need them sitting at the feet of master teachers in context, learning with them, whether it is master practitioners who are in industry, or whether it is our master historians in community. I don't know if you've ever gotten a lesson on organizing and power from Byron Rushing, but I'm not sure I've ever had a better history lesson about anything. But it took being in a community setting and being at the feet of a master and somebody who thinks about it in context all the time. So I think that we have the opportunity between traditional education, between employers, our civic organizations to create more authentic learning experiences. So when we do this, let me not tell you what I think. Let me tell you what I've seen, because there are folks who are doing this. So first, let me start with a framework that Corey Thomas at Rapid 7 gave me several years ago. He said, here's how I think I can show up best as a CEO in cybersecurity. First, I can create exposure for young people. It is actually a part of volunteerism among my employees that we've got to open the door, let the community in, and help them learn about what we do. He said, that's built into everybody's paycheck here, so let's open the door. He said, the second thing I need is to figure out how do we support, my words, not Corey's, requisite skill development. I put it that way because I think we often talk about soft skills, quote unquote soft skills or requisite skills. If you aren't creative, if you can't be relational, I think we all know a lot of the list, you don't have skill, period. We can teach you a lot of technical things, but the requisite skill is a lot about your personal growth and socialization and how you show up in community. That's probably the most powerful thing you can walk into any door with. Now, what Corey told me, he said, look, I'm not sure we have the bandwidth or even necessarily always the expertise to do great training at requisite skills. So he said, I need a partner for that, whether it's Neil Sullivan in the PIC and Kathy or other organizations, but I need help with that developmental piece. I'll pay for it, though. So let's take Corey up on that, and let's suggest that to other employers. Finally, he said to me, I want to participate in developing technical skill. And he said, increasingly, the skills that I'm looking for are so specialized and more arcane that I actually need a hand in training for it. He said, I'm not even sure that I can trust colleges, universities, grad programs, and some other folks to train for some of the things that I need. It requires being here and learning from the scientists who are on my staff. So working with that as a framework, I would ask any employer in the room to consider which one of those three are you good at? Are you good at all of them? And how are you going to step up? Each requires some level of systems and relational architecture with schools, K-12, post-secondary, to figure out what that looks like. And so we need to start to blueprint these things so that they aren't just one-offs. Where exposure is concerned, there's a gentleman that I have great admiration for, Chris Zanetos, who runs a program called STEM Match. STEM Match grew out of his cybersecurity company and is now a foundation that is giving middle grade students exposure to tech companies across Massachusetts. So Chris recruited the companies. He dove in with Boston Public Schools and most of their middle grade schools to say, we're going to create 2-day opportunities at Dell, at Ascentech, at a number of places where we put middle grade students in here to have an experiential learning experience with their teachers, but with professionals as well. So you get some sense of what the job is. You get to do a little bit of the job and kind of think about, what does this mean for my future aspirations? So there are examples of what that exposure looks like. When you think about requisite and technical skills, Red Hat Open Source did a boot camp for a couple of years for 5 high schools in Boston where they basically recreated the new employee orientation for high school students. Incredible. What was stunning to me was that their STEM teachers, their math teachers, their science teachers came to boot camp with them. 50 kids from O'Brien, Dearborn, Eastie, Madison Park. I'm going to forget the 5th one. The trainer asked, who knows any of the 5 programming languages? No student knew all 5, but all 5 were known by students. When we looked at the adults in the room, the adults were looking at their shoes. So the next question was, who knows what open source technology is? 75%, thank you. 75% of the students' hands went up. Adults continued to look at their shoes. And so it told me a couple of things. One, we've got to engage with educators to help them skill up and create a bridge as well. It also told me that we've got to catch up to the pace of learning for young people, because they're coming to school and kind of putting up with us, and they're going home and they're learning what's really important to them. And so how do we bridge that gap? Autodesk is bridging the gap. An externship created for BPS teachers where they sit with CAD engineers, where they sit with architects and some other folks to think about how do you curricularize for a fifth grader what a CAD engineer does, and start to back map that. So we've got the pieces of this. And then the last example I will give is maybe an opportunity and a bit of a cautionary tale, I think, for Boston. Maybe cautionary is the wrong word. I'll let you choose after I say it. Pensole Lewis College of Design in Detroit, Michigan, founded by Dwayne Edwards, former head of Jordan Brand. Dwayne said, I'm going to create the school that guarantees that Black and brown designers make it into the executive ranks in the shoe industry. Started this in Portland, Oregon, migrated it to Detroit, Michigan a couple of years ago. Why am I bringing up this Detroit-based thing and formerly Oregon-based thing? I'm bringing it up because Converse, New Balance, Nike, Puma wanted him to do it in Boston, and we couldn't figure it out. We had done trial runs at MIT and some other places for a couple of summers, got high schools recruited to have folks participate, but it really became a whole economy problem. The first problem was finding Dwayne real estate in Boston for his operation. The difference between Boston and Detroit was that Dan Gilbert, owner of Rock, Quicken Loans, the Cavaliers, said, Dwayne, guess what? I've got an 800,000 square foot building that I'm going to lease to you at a quarter of what I paid for the building, and you will own the building in 10 years. Mm-hmm. Set up shop and let's get going. Then the education system rallied with him and around him. Detroit Superintendent was on the spot, designing what that pipeline would look like to Pensole Lewis College of Design. Very fortunately for him, and I think powerfully, Dwayne acquired a defunct HBCU license in the city. So the idea that now we have an HBCU dedicated to design in the Midwest. So I'm a Detroiter, I love it, but it should have been in Boston.
Thanks, Ron. We so appreciate all of you joining us. We're pretty much at time, but I'd like to do one rapid fire question that I'd like all of you to respond to, if that's okay, because one of the audiences of this paper and of this event is policymakers at both the state and local level. So I wanted to give you all the opportunity, if there was one specific issue within this universe of pathways that we're talking about that you think state or local policymakers should be paying greater attention to, what would you say to them? We'll go Almi, then Debora, then Ron.
Sure. First, I would focus on teacher and educator diversity. And then two, I would focus on strengthening career and college pathways, and nice vehicle for that is early college.
I would encourage us to get behind State Bill 288, House Bill 542, which is an act to promote racially inclusive curriculum in schools. Our students need to know, need to see that people who looked like them mattered in the course of history. We all have a story. It doesn't always get told, and the story that gets privileged is not always the story that's about us. I never learned about people who looked like me when I was in elementary and middle school. And that creates kind of a damage to your psyche when you don't believe that your people contribute to this society. And we all have. We need to get over this idea that talking about aspects of history that make others feel badly is a way to go, because what we are doing is detrimental to the students who are always left out of the picture.
I would offer three things for policy. One, create a skills and experiential-based set of requirements for K-12. So not just what you have to know, what you have to do and what you have to experience. Boston has created a framework called the College Career and Life Readiness Framework, which I think has gotten greater traction, but I'm not sure that we're using it to its fullest potential, but it's the framework for thinking about whole skills development for students. Secondly, if we're serious about authentic learning and contextualized learning, expand seat time requirements and credit conferment. All your seat time does not need to be in a traditional classroom and probably should not be. And you should get credit wherever you choose to learn. And lastly, if work-based learning is going to be a part of the learning experience, pay students.
Thank you all so much. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panel once more. So we're now, thank you all. You may return to your seats. We're going to invite our next panel to come up and join us, and I will introduce them as they come. I see Darian in the back here shaking some hands. That means you, Darian. Thank you all so much. So now we've just got a few folks in different policymaker roles who are just going to ask to kind of respond to what they've heard today and what they read in the report, and share some thoughts on how it resonated with them, particularly given the roles that they play. So Neil and Felicia, you can come on up while I'm introducing you. We've got here Darian Johnson, the Executive Director of the Mass Hire Workforce Board at the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. Thanks for joining us, Darian. And next to Darian, we have Felicia Jamerson, who is the Executive Director of Early College at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Thanks for being here, Felicia. And joining them on the end is Neil Sullivan, the Executive Director of the Boston Private Industry Council. Hi, Neil. So I wonder if we can just kind of jump right into it. I'm going to ask each of you to maybe say a couple of words about your current role and perhaps your background. And then I'd love you to just kind of jump right into telling us what you've heard today or read in the report that resonated with you, and how some of these takeaways overlap with some of the work that you do in your current role. Felicia, why don't we start with you?
So I am Felicia Jamerson. I am the Executive Director of Early College at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It's a long title. DESE, AKA. So I have been in this role for almost a year now. What the importance of early college and what my role brings to the table is...
Felicia, sorry, do you want to just lean into the mic a little bit more so folks can hear you? Thank you.
I thought I still had my teacher voice. I guess that's gone. I've been in education for about 20 years. And what early college does, it's an excellent opportunity to help close the wealth gap in our state. What I love about early college in this state, it's not the same in all states, but a few states have the goal of prioritizing our underrepresented students in early college. So that is our Black students, our brown students, our first generation students, low income students with disabilities, and our multilingual learners as well. So that's our priority. That's what we focus on. And the idea of early college is to bring these students into college while they're still in high school, giving that exposure to our students. We currently have about 50 partnerships between high schools and colleges across the state right now. So I'm currently in the process of overseeing that. We're at a beautiful place in early college right now. In our state, we've been going for about 6 years for early college. And we recently did a strategic review with EY Parthenon. And so now we're at a place where we're reviewing that that data. We've done some presentations over the course of this year around that data, but we are at the point of looking at policy for early college and how we can revamp it, knowing what we've learned from the past 6 years and how we can advance that goal and ensure that more students have the opportunity to actually get into early college and have that opportunity. One of the things that is really just a quick little tidbit about early college, I'm bragging on it a little bit because it is so beneficial for our students of color and our low-income students, is that currently about 80, what is it? I have notes. Sorry, it was 68% of our students in 21 and 22 school year actually persisted into college right after high school, which is well above their high school percentages, well above the state average for our students. So that we've learned that early exposure to college is really benefiting students and allowing them the opportunity to advance and get that exposure at no cost. We have students that are graduating with associate's degrees while they're still in high school. So giving them that exposure. The pathways at Dorsey, we technically do not create the pathways. We support the programs to create the pathways that are most important for their communities. So we do require them to look at their communities and see what areas of need are in the community and to work with our local colleges and community colleges to develop pathways that are relevant to their communities as well. And then move into the resignation. Okay, so what resonated with me is, as I was reading the report, and I read it a couple of times because I just really wanted to get a deep understanding and listen to the community and what people are saying. I think it's so important to have all voices at the table: student voices, business voices, educators, parents. So this was a great opportunity to look at different leaders across the state and to listen to what they had to say about how we can, close this gap and how we can ensure that our students of color can be successful and we can bridge these gaps. And one of the things that definitely resonated with me was the confidence closing piece of it. And how do we close the confidence? Because I really feel that and believe that we're not making moves and we are not getting students to go anywhere if they don't believe it. It's like it starts with the mind. It starts with our mindset. As I was reading the report, one of the things that resonated with me was with Reverend Dr. Jackson said. She said that life and death is in the power of the tongue and that our words are very powerful and what we say to students matters. And I always kind of joke a little bit and say, collectively as a country, we teach children about Santa Claus, and they believe us. We talk to them, we come up with all these excuses about them coming down the chimney, and what if you don't have a chimney? We have every answer to speak to that. And if we collectively can come together and have children believe in Santa Claus, we can collectively come together and have them believe that they can go to college and be successful. Why not? So it's just a matter of us getting together and understanding that we have to change mindsets. And we have to start letting students know at an early age, not when they get to middle school. And early college, we're really focusing on starting these conversations in middle school, but I believe it needs to start happening way sooner than middle school. In kindergarten, pre-K. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and he was mentioning that his daughter was in the first grade and they had college wear day for their shirts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. In the first grade, we're wearing college shirts. Another thing that resonated in the report with me was Mr. Dorsey when he mentioned that he grew up in Boston. And I'm from California, and I've been in the Boston area for about 5 years. And moving here, I thought, okay, #1 in education, this is gonna be so cool, like all these colleges and universities around here. And then I got here and I was like, oh, so it's not for everybody. I was like, oh, okay. So we got some work to do. So I'm here ready to do the work, right? I'm putting my money where my mouth is, or my energy, I guess, where my thoughts were. But it was really shocking that he had mentioned that growing up in Boston, like in the city of Boston, where most of the colleges and universities were, that there was no exposure or access to these colleges.
And I'm like, do you know how many times they took us to San Diego State? I'm from San Diego. As a kid, I was like, I'm over San Diego State. Don't take me there anymore. Like, I don't want to go. Like, everybody in my family went. I'm like anti-San Diego State because I was just over it. And I'm like, why are we just not shoving college down our kids' throats? Why are we not? Why have they not been to Harvard? Like, why have they not been to MIT? Why are we not taking them at a young age to these colleges to get that exposure, to let them see and understand what that feels like? When my daughter, my youngest is 21 now, and when she was probably 7 or 8, we were living in Las Vegas at the time, and my older daughter was doing a volleyball camp at UNLV. And I said, okay, I'm gonna take her to the volleyball camp, and we take the younger one to the library at the college, and we'll work on her homework. That event for her blew her mind, let me tell you. She was like, so we're at a college, and I get to do my spelling words on this whiteboard and I'm doing my homework with college kids? And I'm like, yeah. She was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, that was the coolest thing to her at that time, and it was about that exposure. And at the time, I'm just thinking, this is convenient. I didn't bring you here for all of that, but I'm so glad we got the bonus of that exposure and the bonus of that opportunity for her to see herself in that campus, for her to understand that she could go there and that she could be a student there, because we were sitting right there with the college students doing her spelling words on the whiteboard. Obviously, her spelling words were nowhere close to what the college students were doing, but that wasn't the point. She enjoyed the experience. So those were some of just my main takeaways. We definitely are at an exciting place, like I said, in early college right now, to really expand that initiative and really ensure that we can increase our numbers and make sure that students have that exposure. One more point I want to mention about early college is that there are no requirements for students to get into early college. Meaning that schools cannot require GPAs. They can't say you have to have a certain point on an assessment. All students are underrepresented students have an opportunity to access early college. And what we have found in our research is that our students that have taken our MCAS in the 8th grade, who scored below in our English and our math, ELA and math, who scored below average on the score and actually took early college classes, those students, compared to their students who also scored below average that did not take early college classes, were able to not only be successful in those early college classes, but also to persist into college after high school. So that's been some exciting news to see that it's not just our high-performing students that can go. It's just about support. It's about believing in the students, giving them the opportunity to know and understand that they can achieve and that they can be successful. And if we believe in them, they will believe in themselves.
Thanks, Felicia. Neo, I'm going to invite you to go next. If you want to say a word or two about one or two takeaways you've had from this conversation.
Sure. I'll do the intro quickly. Neil Sullivan, Executive Director, Boston Private Industry Council, for 30 years. The PIC, as it's more commonly known, is the city's workforce development board, so we're quasi-governmental, but unlike workforce development boards across this country, we also are a substantial nonprofit organization hiring over 35 frontline staff who work with high school students, those who've left high school without a diploma, and those who have gone on to local colleges. Born and raised in Detroit, we Detroiters are absurdly proud for no apparent reason, in case you didn't pick that up earlier. Thank you, Ron, for covering that territory. Came out here to college, Amherst College, quickly fled back to Chicago as a high school teacher, taught high school in Chicago and around Chicago for 3 years. I was 20-something, so I cut my salary in half and got lured to Massachusetts, to Boston, I thought, to join a community organizing effort called Fair Share, still the largest community organizing operation ever to grace the state. Worked largely in Worcester, did some time in East Boston, and was the statewide strategy and issues director at the end of that run of 6 years. A lot of us activists were very focused on the mayoral election. Most folks were with Mel King. Some of us thought we could win with Ray Flynn, which was a bizarre notion until it happened. 40 years ago, Mel King and Ray Flynn were chosen as the finalists, and the political and corporate establishment of Boston found itself on the outside looking in. Just so we note that moment, October 11, 1983. 10 years with Ray Flynn as his chief policy advisor, city's policy director, and the mayor's daily confidant. And then when that gig was up, when I saw his attention drifting toward national and international affairs, I knew what I wanted to do was jobs and education, jobs because employment is the immediate antidote for poverty, career as the long-term antidote to poverty, and education or school as the path forward. I want to congratulate MBAE, Ed, and the whole team for lifting up career development as an education priority. It's been absent in the national conversation for 2 decades, and it's obviously coming back, and somebody's got to frame it so that those who aren't conversant in career development education start to see it as something obvious. For me, as it is obvious, I often do my AMP rap. Aspiration precedes motivation. Motivation precedes performance. You've got to get it in the right order. We assume motivation through high expectations, and that does work for some. But for many, aspiration is the but for. And if you grow up in an environment where you meet professionals, it's your community, and even if you just understand education is the pain you have to go through to get ahead, then you start with motivation, either positive or negative. If you don't have it, that's where equity resides. And other speakers have spoken to that. Aspiration has to be something we are constantly cultivating among children as well as youth. If you aspire, you got to see it to be it. If you aspire to any number of things, then you have the motivation necessary to perform academically. So that's a really key concept. Now, let me talk about more versus all on the equity framework, okay? More is what we're after. More students in, and now I'm going to drop a phrase, more students participating in career-connected learning. More students participating in career-connected learning, the earlier the better. As a complement to academics, perhaps integrated into the academic experience. How do you pursue equity when you're doing more? You disaggregate by race, gender, and by race, by gender, and by race, gender. And maybe you get to class and a few other things, but you disaggregate and then you identify the disparities and the gaps, and you make sure your more closes those gaps, right? That's basically how we're thinking these days. It's very progressive. All is something different, okay? All means you get a taste of it for everybody. Now, when we said all back in the all means all days, it kind of quickly gravitated toward special education, toward English language learning, and that's critical, that's essential, but you can't ignore the middle. So here's what I'm putting forward. Career-connected learning for all, regardless of structure, okay? And I'm going to move at that a little bit here. All right, so what are we talking about when we're talking about career-connected learning? Well, frankly, with Amy Lloyd as the new Assistant Secretary of Occupational Career and Adult Education for the U.S. Department of Labor, we have an ally who is framing this. Career-connected learning, career-connected high schools. work-based learning. These are the three phrases that are starting to surface, not just in the Federal Department of Education, but also in partnership with the Department of Labor and the Department of Commerce. So, this is important stuff. We're getting a framework here. It does involve college and career advising and all the activities that help young people aspire and think about the path forward. MyCap is extraordinarily important. It's got traction throughout the state. Essential, but not sufficient. Work-based learning. Work experience. Back in the way back, Emerson and I collaborated on getting young people jobs at the Morrissey Boulevard Stop and Shop. Okay, Emerson worked for a Stop and Shop out of Quincy. There was this extraordinary guy by the name of Sam Kahn, an idiosyncratic version of Boston history. And we got jobs for black and brown teenagers at a time when they weren't getting hired. I never lose track of work experience as being fundamental, paid work experience. It's a lesson in and of itself. However, if we have, and we need to revamp our work-based learning plan in this Commonwealth to get to those requisite skills that Ron was talking about: communication, collaboration, professionalism, problem solving, creativity, core, as well as whatever else we hang around it, but that's the core. And we have an opportunity, particularly now that we have phones and this, that, and the other thing, to really have everybody, anyone who supervises a young person, focus on skill development. Right? So that's huge. Obviously, I'm going to speak to private sector culture, as we're way ahead in the rest of the country in Boston in terms of jobs and internships. Okay, we're a little lacking in connecting it back to the classroom like we once did, and we're working on it. But compared to Europe, our employer corporate culture is lost in the desert in the midst of a historic labor and skill shortage. I'll just drop that for a second, and then maybe we go back to that eventually. And then finally, the role of an intermediary is important. I'm obviously going to speak to that. If somebody's not promoting and handling the logistics of work-based learning and connecting it back to the classroom, it doesn't happen. And then here's something you got to hear. Curriculum. We can't just realign what we already do. It's not working for all. We need curriculum, as we once had in Boston, that is industry-based, career exploration curriculum taught by teachers who know how to develop academic skills in the context of career development. I'm all in for occupational training, for vocational education. I'm all in for that, but there's something different. It's like you got to understand, and young people got to understand, the difference between industry and occupation. Okay? Anyone can look at a hospital and identify not just dozens of occupations that make this thing work, right? So, let's not kid ourselves. How many of you who are over 40 are doing the same thing you were doing in 25? Okay, we preach pathways, but then we know it's a zigzag operation. We need to equip young people to make choices of consequence and then make new choices based on what they learned experientially. That's, the pathway thing, it's kind of a structured thing when, I'm going to decide and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. That's not how it works. We have to help young people with the agency necessary to navigate pathways. So I'll cut it right there. It's just, if we can provide career-connected learning in the classroom, in the advisory context, at the workplace and in the community, and if we can get those four elements talking to one another all the time, I believe we can reach all students.
Thanks, Neil. And I'm going to introduce my boss, Ed Lambert, in just a second. But first, Darian, we'd love to hear a little bit about you and maybe some reactions you had to today's conversation.
Well, thanks, James and Ed, for having me here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Darian Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the Mass Higher State Workforce Board, which advises the governor on building a workforce development system that aligns with state education goals and economic development policies. I'm really, first and foremost, I'm 2 months into my job, and I want to say that. And I say that because I'm really honored to be able to be in a leadership role within the administration, advising on how we look at jobs and also how do we look at the individual. And my whole career has been, previously worked at the Black Economic Council as the head of policy, and I work for Senator Elizabeth Warren. And one of the things that I bring to this work is I've been across this Commonwealth back and forth too many times to count. And that's really important because when we talk about the individual person and where the community they're from, we need to be there. We need to see what those conversations are and how people are living. And my whole career has been around equity and what how is people dealing with these issues on the ground, and what are those obstacles, what are those barriers that they're dealing with. And when I think about the report, the first thing that comes to my mind is really mentorship. Emerson Foster's here. When I first came back from college, from New York, I was volunteering in the community, and I met Emerson, and he told me about a group called the Black Men's Dinner Group. And I was 22 years old, and I didn't have any network. He told me to come to this event. I come to this event, and 8 years later, we're still talking, and he's always been there in my corner. So thank you, Emerson. I just want to say that. Mentorship's important, and the reason why I say that is I understand my privilege and my role and also my lived experiences. You know, I'm 30 years old, I just turned 30, and I'm an executive director, and I'm not afraid to say that. And the reason why I say that too is because I've had mentors along the way, of all creed, all religion, and people who have looked after me and also told me that I couldn't be in these rooms. And I know that the thing that I hear the most, when I go to a Chelsea or I go to a Lawrence and I go to a Springfield, is we don't even know about these opportunities. And mentorship is important, and also accessibility. Seeing somebody that looks like you and wants to invest in you and take you all the way from the beginning to the end. I find that a lot of the students I talk to and individuals that are young, they tell me all the time is, I don't see myself in these rooms and I don't believe I belong. And when did we, as a society or even here in Massachusetts, when we talk about equity, that worries me because that's not the state I was born in, and I don't believe in that, and that's why I'm in this work now. And so I think it's really important when we talk about opportunities that we really consider the individual. I think sometimes policy, we can be looking on the top, like a tower, looking down, and that's just not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be from the ground up. That's how it was started for the people. And so in my role, and as the executive director of the Mass Higher Workforce Board, I bring that type of perspective to this work because I know how important it is for people to see it, whether that's academia, that's private companies. I know what it means to be centered by the people. And so with that being said, mentorship has gotten so many people into rooms that they could never see themselves in. And we need to continue to create those systems. There's folks that have never even seen a private corporation room before, or boardroom, and to expect them to go into those rooms just because we place them into jobs is not enough. It's not. I would not be here if I was just placed in a job. I just would not be able to make it. I was able to make it because every way I went, I had a mentor, I had somebody that watched over me and made sure that I completed my task, and I also had somebody I can rely on and talk about my culture and where I come from Dorchester, Massachusetts. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't have a lot of my friends there that are in these rooms that I am with. And so the people that I look up to are the people that my advisors and my supervisors. So I really strongly echo that. It's really about that connection, that one-to-one connection, and also accessibility. And the reason why I know we talk about early college, but I also think too, we have folks that are 25 to 34 years old in this state that also are looking to get back and be re-credentialed in this workforce. And the government administration recently put out the Mass Reconnect program, which gives free community college tuition to ages 25 to 34. I go across the state and I tell people about this. A lot of people don't even know this, and this is why I'm saying is like we all have the power in this room to be able to push those types of information and those types of opportunities to folks. So I'm not going to keep on reiterating the same point, but we all have power within ourselves. Words matter, but it's all about action and accountability. And so, like I said, I'm one story of many that are across this Commonwealth. And I'm going to use my voice in this role every day to talk about how I, a black man at 30 years old, who's an executive director, was able to reach here, because in the hopes that other young folks that are here and in this room and across this Commonwealth see that there is a chance we can do this. And we have legislators here who are committed to equity, and we have folks in this room that are committed to change. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, Darian. Thanks to the whole panel. We appreciate it. Y'all can return to your seats now, and I'm going to recognize our Executive Director, Ed Lambert.
James, thank you. And before I introduce our closing remarks, I just want to thank you all very much for coming. I want to thank the MBAE team. Liz Anderson is doing a great job moving this agenda forward. I want to thank our videographer, Dangerous Productions. I want to thank State House News Service. I want to thank our panelists. It's very humbling to be on this stage, given the depth of this conversation here today. Our interviewees, our partners at Latinos for Education, and Amanda Fernandez. Amanda, if you're here, please give us a wave. And Jenny there's Amanda, and Jenny Williamson, who's also here from Ed Trust, Massachusetts, their executive director. We thank you both for the rich partnership. We have made a purposeful decision not to get too heavy into policy and action, but please go to the website for the coalition. There are 16 organizations in our coalition, and you can visit the website at studentpathwaystosuccess.org, where a lot of the issues that were talked about today are listed. We have a lot of work to do. I'm struck by what Ron said, that we often might know the path, but don't always do as good a job as we should getting there. And I think that this is what we hope this report would do for all of us today. In closing, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce a great friend, and Darian set me up when he mentioned legislators who are here. There are several in attendance. And to close out the program, I'd like to bring up a good friend of MBAE's, Representative Manny Cruz.
Good morning. We're going to do that one more time. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. It is such a tremendous honor to be here today. And Ed, I first want to thank you for your partnership and the partnership of MBAE. It's been a tremendous pleasure to be in the trenches with you, both in my prior role at Latinos for Education as the advocacy director and now as the state representative for the great city of Salem. And as I stand before you today and I hear these tremendous panelists talk about the work that's necessary in our Commonwealth, I'm the first Afro-Latino state representative for the city of Salem. Thank you. The first Afro-Latino vice chair of the Salem School Committee. And I wouldn't be standing before you in a position of power if it were not for what Darian just raised. Mirrors and windows and mentors who paved the way for me as someone who was an at-risk youth who survived domestic violence and went through a school system that was tracking me for the school-to-prison pipeline. It was the belief of mentors in the community in places like the Boys and Girls Club, Leap for Education, that saw the assets that I brought and didn't focus on the deficits, that empowered me to believe that I could be a leader within my community. And in high school, I had a 2.0 GPA. I wasn't college bound. In fact, I was in a career voc tech program. I wanted to go to culinary school so that I could travel the world and get as far away from my community as possible. And then the 2008 election happened. And it was the first time that I saw someone who reflected the identities that I held in Barack Obama, that spoke to leadership, government, and what it could be when we showed up to the ballot box and we got involved. And I was inspired, motivated. And I thought to myself, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I knew no pathway to get there. So I started talking to my mentors. How do I get involved in government? How do we change dynamics from what I've seen? And they started creating social capital for me, making introductions. And when I graduated from high school, I made a change. Instead of going to culinary school, I went to Salem State University to study political science. First job I took out of high school was as a National Park Service Ranger, and I put my hat in the arena. I applied to join Governor Patrick's statewide youth council, and I had the pleasure of serving as his chair. And when I think about those formative experiences in government, the proximity that it gave me to someone like Governor Patrick, it really was the culmination of this journey into public service. Now, what does it mean for me to talk about my own journey? It's a reflection of the investments that have been made in our Commonwealth and the opportunities that we have still to make sure that every student has access to their own individualized pathway to success. So when I think about the work that's ahead of us, the Students for Pathways Coalition has put forward a legislative agenda. There are several bills that have been filed. I'm carrying 2 of them. And I just want to give thanks because when these coalitions come together, they get to choose who their bill sponsors are. And 50% of the bills that are within this legislative package are being carried by members of the Black and Latino caucus. And we weren't just asked to carry the legislation. We were asked to be equal partners in the objective of getting them passed. Bills that cover everything from ensuring that all of our students, Black, Latino, get access to computer science. When I read MBAE's report 2 years ago that only 9% of Black students, 15% of Latino students, 3% of multilingual learners, and only 10% of poor students are enrolled in a computer science course, despite the fact that when we know the data for a median income, graduating from high school in the Commonwealth is about $41,000, but a computer science degree pathway could lead you to $90,000. That puzzled me. And when I told Ed that I saw this particular legislation and my own experience with computer science, I said, I want to be able to carry this bill and to articulate the story of why this matters for our students and specifically for our students of color. It's not about a minimum requirement. It's about economic mobility, generational wealth, and that is what is most important when we think about our students. And then there was another bill, MyCap. Guidance, advising. I remember my guidance experience. I met with my guidance advisor one time as a freshman and then as a senior graduating from high school. My guidance counselor didn't know who I was. She didn't know what I cared about, that I had an interest in public service. We met twice. It wasn't a meaningful experience. But by implementing MyCap in every single one of our schools in the Commonwealth, what we would do is we would give equitable access to actual high-quality career and academic planning that will lead our students to their vocations. And right now, we don't have that equity of opportunity. We don't even have the equality. I want to name something. For our students that are in predominantly white communities, they get access to MyCap. But in gateway cities and places that I represent, it's not the case. And if it's good enough for your students, it's good enough for mine and my children. So it has to be universal and universal access. And as I think about the conversations and the themes that have been raised today, I can't help but think about the portrait of a high school graduate. And I want to take you back 7 years. 7 years ago, a mentee of mine, Kendall, graduated from the Malden Public Schools. He survived foster care. He was transient, half Black, half Italian, didn't know his birth parents, but he had this burning desire to succeed in a system that he was not designed to succeed in. Kendall graduated from high school, but he wanted to go into the trades. He had no meaningful mentors who could show him how to get there. When I looked at Kendall's resume and I saw the jobs that he had taken, it looked like he was just moving from one job to another without the skills necessary to understand how to navigate towards his ultimate goals of being in the trades. I met Kendall at Wing Night. We just got to talking about the Patriots and his love of football, and I saw something in him. I saw myself reflected in Kendall. And when he told me about his career aspirations, I told him I'm going to help him. And today, Kendall shot me a text. It was a copy of his OSHA certification. He got a call from the laborers that he'll be starting as an apprentice this week, on the job. And that's the portrait of a high school graduate 7 years ago. That's not the way that the portrait of a high school graduate should look today. It shouldn't take the equity of access that I provide as a state leader, as a person of color, for me to say, I'm going to expend my social capital to help others see the gifts that I see in you. This should be the norm for all of our Black, Latino children in this Commonwealth. And that's why I'm so proud to partner with MBAE, Latinos for Education, my dear colleagues, and the Ed Trust to not only move forward this legislative agenda, but to do the reforms that are necessary in the building. And I don't do that work alone. I'm the first member of Salem's legislative delegation to ever serve in the Black and Latino caucus. And this year, we hit a historic high, 24 members in this distinguished caucus. And it is in partnership that I have the great pleasure in this program of inviting one of my dear colleagues who's not maybe new to the legislature as I am, but not new to the work. We're both alumni of the Distinguished General Court. We worked here as staffers, but we've been deeply involved in our communities, engaging in mentorship. And he has the great pleasure of also serving on the Joint Committee on Education, and we're working together on some really important legislation. But as I've gotten to know Representative Worrell, what I've learned about him is that he cares so deeply about the roots of inequity in our society. Whether we're talking about our students who are now formerly incarcerated that are trying to make their way back, speaking up in our state and ensuring that as we're thinking about state resources, that we're developing commissions that center the voices of Black and brown voices, but that we're also thinking about what are the opportunities to build generational wealth. And as a friend, I know that I can always count on Rep. Worrell to be present, engaged, and to take on the right fights in public education. So with that, I invite my dear friend, Representative Worrell, to join me on stage.
Man, with an introduction from Representative Manny Cruz like that, I feel like we could just say, all right, everyone leave, we're good. I also do want to mention one of the 24 Black and Latino caucus members, Representative Priscilla Sosa. Is she here? You want to just stand up and just give a wave? Also a true fighter in the education realm and also in the, she doesn't like when I say this, but the town of Framingham and on the school committee. Thank you. I want to thank Education Trust, Latinos for Education, and the MBAE for having me. And after reading this report, lifting up our community's report, this is basically my experience. I went to MECO. I went to Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School. I graduated with Jenny Williamson. I was one of 27, 28 Black and brown young people that was taking an hour-and-a-half bus ride to go to Sudbury, Massachusetts, every single morning, waking up at 4:30 in the morning for taking a 5:30 bus. And when I look at the report, it's just opportunities. The opportunities that the children in my community, the Blackest and brownest community in the Commonwealth, are missing. My parents came from Jamaica and Barbados and said, you know what, I want to give you the best opportunity, you, your brother, and your sister the best opportunity. So we decided to take you guys out of Boston Public Schools and putting you through MECO. And within my 7th grade year, I went to England, and I came back to the Lee School, which is a after-school program, a BCYF program, and I told people I went to England. And all my community members were like, what? You went where? I said, yeah, I went to England with my school. And that's just the exposure and the opportunities that Lincoln and Lincoln-Sudbury has given me. And with exposure, I have a funny story. I called my mom a couple weeks ago and I asked her where she was at. She was like, I'm in Harvard. I said, Mom, what are you doing in Harvard? You're a retired nurse. Like, you're not going back to school. You got like 5 grandchildren. You're not going back to school. She said, I know. I got to pick up a hat. I said, you're picking up a hat for who? She was like, I got to pick up a hat for Carter. Carter's my 8-year-old son. And I guess one day when my mom was picking up Carter from the bus stop, Carter said, I want to go to Harvard. So what my mom did was buy him a hat, gave him the hat, and said, you can be at Harvard. And I thank my mom for that. And just the woman here said, just the exposure of that hat. I don't know what that hat's going to do, but I feel like that hat is going to bring Carter into greatness. And this is what our Black and brown communities are missing: the exposure, the actual, you can do this. You can do anything you put your mind to and set your mind to. Me personally, I didn't think I was going to be a state representative, but I'm here now for the mentorships, the people that instilled in me, Chris, you can do anything that you put your mind to, and don't stop, keep on going. I didn't know me and Representative Cruz aligned so well. I became a culinary arts. I got my culinary arts degree. I'm the best, I say I'm the best cook out of the 160 state representatives. So I did get my culinary arts degree. But just those mentorships, you're gonna stop. What? Keep on going. I see something, people seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I want to thank those mentors, those Black and brown mentors throughout my whole career, continuing to push me. And just talking about opportunity, I remember, again, my mom, I was going to Lincoln-Sudbury, it was about my junior year, and this is when the little activist in me wanted to, that came out. Went to Lincoln-Sudbury from K1 to 12th grade, graduated there, and during my 11th grade year, I started acting up. And my mom decided to take me out of Lincoln-Sudbury for a semester and put me into Boston's Day and Evening Academy. I went from back then we were probably top 5 in the Commonwealth for schools in Lincoln-Sudbury to underperforming schools. And the iniquities that I seen from every day going to Lincoln-Sudbury and seeing the way how, as soon as you walk in that door, it smells of thrive, education, all this, to going to Boston Day and Evening where it was, you got to survive. Like when I walked in the bathrooms, certain things weren't allotted, like the necessities of soap and just having a mirror in the bathrooms. And just, again, giving our children the opportunity to succeed in the classrooms. Soap and all this is needed. So again, I just want to thank you for writing the report and continue as the state representative of the blackest and brownest district. My phone isn't working. I had a quote, but thank you guys for allowing me to be here. And again, thank you, Ed, for the quote. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Worrell, for your testimony and for sharing your reflections on this report. And now I have the distinct pleasure of closing the program. And so before I give you all thanks for being in attendance, there's a few things that I just want to leave you that were my takeaways. We heard from a superintendent today who talked about the importance of mirrors and windows in the classroom. It shouldn't take until a student is at the end of their academic career for them to have seen a mirror and window. And so if you're interested about how you can advance educator diversity in our state and ensure that the story of 8-time MTEL test takers is not the reality for our educators of color who are trying to become teachers in the classroom, you can support the Educator Diversity Act, which was filed by my dear colleagues, leader in the House, Alice Peisch, and State Senator Jason Lewis. Additionally, we heard today the importance of business and school districts coming together to work on tightening up curriculum, frameworks, and pathways. I can't stress to you the importance of this. As the Vice Chair of the Salem School Committee, I have the distinct pleasure of now being able to advocate for the same career voc tech programs that I support, but also the broader curriculum. And we are thinking about how do we deepen the work. And the challenge that we run into sometimes with employers is that they don't always want to engage deeply. They're willing to sit on an advisory board, but we need the skin in the game. So as you're thinking about yourself as an employer in the districts that are in proximity to you, I would encourage you, approach the superintendent and members of the school committee and see what it would take to develop an MOU, that memorandum of understanding that puts skin in the game for you and for the district to ensure that your students who are your prospective employees of the future will have opportunities at your companies. And I can't stress to you the importance of deepening that particular work. We also heard the importance of the urgency around this particular issue. As wealth disparities continue to increase, it's going to be even more acute for our Black, Latino, and all of our people of color. So as we think about this legislative package and what's in it, I do want to underscore that it's part of an intersectional framework that does include some of the other topic areas that have been discussed, like early college and expanding access, but also the omnibus legislation that's been filed by Chair Tyler would be really critical for our state to have a North Star about what every student, employee, employer should be looking towards as we think about the future of our workforce here in the Commonwealth. And with that, I want to thank you all for being in attendance today for this conversation, and I welcome you all to join our coalition in our efforts to ensure that our Commonwealth is a more equitable and more fair place for all of our residents and certainly for all of our students. Thank you.